everybody. Welcome to our Facts episode for March, Family and Community Talks. I'm going to kind of ad-lib here for a second while I wait to get live on my own laptop so that I can see who joins us and when and how all that is going. And okay, I think we are good to go. I'll just try not to look at myself because there's a 1-minute delay, which is really weird. Thank you for anyone who's joining us. I'm Kate Rollicke. I'm the Early Intervention and Prevention Director at the Marion County Commission on Youth. And every first Friday of the month at noon, we do this Facebook Live conversation so that we can talk about different topics that impact youth and families, and also talk to our wonderful experts that are in the community. So we're really excited that you're joining us, and we hope that you'll interact throughout our time together by posting in the comments, share questions that you might have. I'm sure Heather is super excited to answer any questions that you might have. But first, before we get launched into our conversation about internet safety, this year McCoy wants to honor the achievements and hard work of youth around our community and in Indianapolis. So we've created the Youth Hero Contest, and we had tons of nominations through February. Keep the nominations coming in because we're going to be doing it every month. You can nominate young people ages 18 and under on the McCoy website, and I think we've been posting it on Facebook and Twitter as well. It's a really easy form to fill out, and you can nominate either as a young person or as an adult. And basically we just want to know who you think is doing good deeds in the community, doing a great job. Maybe they did something special, maybe they volunteered, maybe they improved their grades, maybe they're helping out a neighbor, whatever it might be, you can nominate. So this month, or I guess for February, we are celebrating Micaiah. So Micaiah is a 14-year-old 8th grader at World Changers School of the Arts in Indianapolis. And she's a leader who wants to see the youth in her generation achieve greatness, and she encourages them to do just that. Recently, she facilitated a sock drive completely on her own for the youth at Stopover, and she solicited donations from family, friends, neighbors, and her community, and she donated over 100 pairs of socks. Like, that's so impressive. I'm thinking about how I was when I was 14, and I'm pretty sure I wasn't thinking to do something this thoughtful for other people. So we're just really proud of Micaiah. We're celebrating her today and hope that you think the same thing that we all do, that she's an amazing youth hero in our community. So remember to keep the nominations coming in. We want everyone who is young and doing something incredible. I just saw a comment, sorry, on Facebook. Young, incredible people in our community doing great things to be celebrated, and this is just one quick way that we're trying to do that. So moving on to the business of what we're talking about today. This month we are talking about the internet, and specifically internet safety for young people. And boy, has it been in the news this week. So we're really going to be talking about how adults and young people interact on the internet, and about how families can really be having these conversations early and often with young people to keep them protected and to also make sure that they're really starting their internet life, so to speak, because anymore I feel like we all have internet lives. How they can be starting that off on the right foot. I'm really excited to introduce our two guests because they're both really good friends of mine, like Facebook friend level. So Karen and Heather are here, and I think that they're really going to add to the conversation, and hopefully you'll walk away with some good information. So Karen, I already told Heather this, but I'm going to repeat myself so much because we never know when people might join us. We hope that you tune in. And so just constantly letting them know what we're talking about and who you are. But Karen, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, I'm Karen Burton. I am the training coordinator with the Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Violence.
And Karen, can you tell us a little bit more about what you do as the training coordinator and how you specifically got interested in tech safety?
Absolutely. Well, as training coordinator, my job really is just to oversee all of our training programs that we offer at the coalition. So training law enforcement, judges, allied professionals, all who work with survivors or with those who are affected by domestic violence. And so that includes kind of all manner of things, from facilitating trainings to overseeing our technology pieces and things like that. And specifically as far as the technology piece, it kind of was by default. I was the tech geekiest in the office at one point in time. And so there really started to be a push, and this was several years ago, particularly kind of coinciding with the rise of social media. If you look at 2009, 2010, there really started to be a rise in social media, and unfortunately, when there's kind of this a new technology on the front, there are lots of ways that technology can be used to harm people. And so we really took it very seriously to be able to advise our programs that work with survivors, anybody who really has a digital footprint now that we know, how to do that in a safer manner. There's really no way to do it in a way that's safe, because if you're engaging in technology, you're engaging with something that can be used to harm you. And so we really tried to stay on the forefront of ways that we could at least be knowledgeable, so that we could advise, and to try to stay ahead of just ways that we can engage with technology in a safer way.
Yeah, awesome. And I'm a little bit biased because I worked with Karen for 4 years at the coalition, but she's a rock star. And Heather, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Heather Rolger-Coleman. I am a really long title, Early Intervention and Education Training Coordinator with Children's Bureau's Neighborhood Alliance for Child Safety Program.
Wow, we're like almost in a competition here for a long time.
And I'm part of the outreach team with that program, and one of my primary goals is to do a lot of prevention trainings in the community, and I coordinate the Stewards of Children training in the community, which is a child sexual abuse prevention training, and so I train anyone that interacts in the life of a child. So parents, child care workers, teachers, coaches, I mean, you name it. Anyone who interacts with the life of the child should really have that important information around preventing such some awful things.
Yeah. And I want to get a high five from Becky, McCoy's training director, after this. So I should add that McCoy hosts Stewards of Children training throughout the year. So just check out our training calendar, and you can definitely meet Heather in person and get through that awesome it's a fantastic training if you haven't been through it.
It's next one is March 12th here at McCoy as part of the Learning Network.
Awesome.
So check it out. And we do those free all over the community. So anywhere in Marion County, I'm happy to come to you, set that up. So with moms groups, books clubs, you name it. We're happy to offer that training.
Well, thank you both so much for being here to talk with anyone who joins in and watches this video later about internet safety, or how we can make the internet safer. I really like that you brought that up, Karen.
Yeah.
So can you both talk a little bit more about why it's important to talk about internet safety, especially when it comes to young people?
And it's always interesting to kind of take a varied perspective. For us, we take that perspective of ways in which, and working with young adults, with youth, again, because there are so many ways that the things that we do in our online presence can be used against us for a very long time. The internet is forever. We've had that conversation. Doesn't matter how quickly you delete something, it's going to be out there and it will be found. And so you're also engaging with people where there's a level of anonymity. You don't know. You can't confirm that identity of that person, even if you think it's somebody. So the ways in which we engage with that in a way that can protect ourselves, and in a way that can protect the people around us. So we take kind of a dual perspective of working with individuals who are, looking at and working with youth who are really just starting that, they're on that cusp of, what's a relationship, being in relationships, what's healthy, what's not healthy, where are my boundaries? But then also come from the other side, anybody in the family can be a kind of an entry point to anybody else, right? So if I am a child and my parents had a violent or unhealthy relationship,
I become a tool that can be used against that other parent as well. So all of the ways that we can engage in a safer, in just safer conduct overall.
I think it's really important too that we think about the fact that we care about, you know, who our kids are playing with and keeping them safe in the real world. We need to also be thinking about how we are keeping them safe in the virtual world. So when we think about with our teens, when you know, who are you hanging out with, when are you coming home, we need to be asking those same kinds of questions about their online world. So who are you hanging out with online? What apps are you going to online? And there needs to really be that open communication about what they're seeing and doing. And even with our young kiddos, you know, we're a real tech savvy world these days. Kids are getting their hands on tablets and phones and things like that younger and younger. And so really monitoring what they're seeing and doing, and knowing that that is just another avenue for potential perpetrators to access them as well. So we need to be mindful about creating boundaries and safety tips with our kiddos around that.
And I think it's also important to emphasize that just because that technology may be coming from the school district, there's so many districts out there, you know, my kid is in a school district who they all get MacBooks. Just because when they're within the school confines, there are apps and there are things that they can't access, does not mean that they can't still access that at home. So don't just assume that, you know, oh, it came from the school, so therefore it's safe. Know what they're accessing at home versus at school. Know what they can and can't access at home versus at school, and ways that is going to play into how you need to monitor, what you need to monitor, and what are the things that you can do as a parent to keep track of or to intervene if you see something that's an area that you think might be inappropriate.
I just had that conversation with a friend last night at dinner about how schools have specific firewalls and safety mechanisms set up, and we need to be thinking about how can we help parents and caregivers set those same kinds of safety standards up at home so that, you know, the same kind of standard of safety is shared in both locations. So I think it's important to note that this is an issue that I think can leave a lot of parents and caregivers feeling overwhelmed, unsure, perhaps a little paranoid.
For sure.
And so, like, let's acknowledge that. Let's sit in that kind of feeling right now. So a couple of facts that I want to share, because I try to share facts because it plays off the whole acronym family and community talks, facts. Okay, you get it. So a couple facts. As of 2010, and this is kind of old data, but only 9% of kids who use the internet received an unwanted sexual solicitation. So 9% is still 9% too many, but I think it's still also a percentage that's probably lower than what we have in our minds. Yeah. When there is a report of an online predator, multiple news outlets usually jump on the story. It's a very newsworthy by news media standards story. And so that can also perpetuate the feeling that it's happening all over the place. And that the University of New Hampshire's Crimes Against Children Research Center reports that kids are more likely to pressure each other to send or post sexual content than an adult. I bring all of this up because what's been in the news lately has been what's called the Momo Challenge. It's kind of timely that was kind of stirring this week. I printed out several articles about it, reading about it. The image scares me so much I had to tape a Post-it note over it so that it wouldn't scare me on my desk.
It is jarring for sure.
It's very scary. But I thought maybe we could just have a quick dialogue about what that is, and why parents should pay attention, but also why they should be paying attention all the time, not only when a news story like this pops up. So thoughts?
Yeah. So I completely agree. So in a way, this Momo challenge hit the news, it was on Twitter, and in a way, the sensationalism of that story made it go viral. As we began talking about it with our kiddos, and kiddos are of course seeing the news and all that, that's almost what made it become more sensationalized and talked about a lot more. But I completely agree. You mentioned the word paranoia earlier, and I always bring this up as I do my trainings and we start to look at the statistics, because when you're kind of bringing the awareness to a parent, they might all of a sudden say, oh no, and I've heard parents saying, well, my child's just absolutely going to get no more YouTube privileges, and I would challenge them to take a step back and say, maybe let's not come from a place of fear and paranoia, because that makes us feel kind of stuck, and come from a place of awareness and vigilance to say, have those ongoing conversations, monitoring what their kiddo is watching, and just having these frank conversations with our kiddos about, if you did see this, because Momo challenge will come and go, and then what will be the next big story that hits the news and becomes sensationalized. And we always want to just, if true prevention is that we're kind of dropping those seeds of knowledge into our kiddos, having those ongoing conversations, so when things do come up, they're prepared and they know that there's an open door and they can talk to you about it.
Absolutely. And I think it's really critical, as you said, Heather, it's about that open dialogue and having a continual conversation, but like you said, being very, very frank and saying, okay, what are the things about this that makes us uncomfortable? What about this? It's not just this challenge. It's not just the dynamic of what is being, talked about in this challenge. It's what about it is inappropriate. What about it is making us uncomfortable as adults? What about it would make you uncomfortable as whatever age that person is that you're talking with? And because that's going to spread across, like you said, there's going to be another something that's going to come up, but it's also that greater dynamic around, if somebody's finding their way in or this message is reaching you through social media, why is it inappropriate? Being able to use those critical thinking skills to really kind of stop and go, okay, I need to understand how this is affecting me in terms of my emotions, in terms of my reaction to it, why I feel like it's inappropriate, what are my resources? Can I, am I comfortable going to mom? If I'm not comfortable going to mom because maybe I was watching a YouTube video that I know I'm not supposed to, or I was on my device when I wasn't supposed to be, where else can I go to ask those questions? And where else can I go to get good information about this so I can be an informed consumer? And wanting to really emphasize with our kids those critical thinking skills and those evaluative skills, and setting those seeds early to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I know that there's a lot more to unpack with what's going on in the real world and on the news, and we can't get to all of it. So if you do have questions, let us know in the comments, and we can help you get connected to resources, or we can connect you with Karen and Heather so they can help you get connected to resources. But one thing that I know we talked about last month, so last month we did a video about teen dating violence, and a lot of the conversation that we had was around talking with our kids and talking with young people early and often. And we had a really fascinating conversation about consent, and how consent doesn't just have to be about sexual activity. It can be about a number of things. And so I kind of want to bring that frame to the internet and thinking about, posting pictures of people or posting information about people or stories, and just have a conversation about what does it look like to be having a conversation with young people about that? When should we start having that conversation, and how can we role model what we want our young people to do? So that's a big loaded question.
Yeah.
Feel free to pick which part you like the best.
Well, Kate, you and I had this conversation kind of as we were preparing for this, and talking about that idea that, like you said, consent is not just around this one issue of, engaging in sexual activity, or consent around, dating behaviors, things like that. Consent is around, and we really model that consent around everything, and especially when we're talking about something where so much information gets out there that we aren't even aware of the ways we transfer information to other people, and information that can then be kind of gleaned over time. And are children participating in the internet, participating in the setup of their digital footprint? If I'm posting pictures, if I'm posting information about my kid, and my child also has a Facebook account, or my child has an Instagram account, so I'm also tagging them, and that's bringing their friends, and that's putting their information out there. Am I asking them to do that? Am I tagging them and unconsciously then spreading their information to a wider audience? Do I even know when I put a photo of them on Facebook, or I put a photo of them on Snapchat? Do I even know the ways in which that's spreading out? Am I also then allowing them to have control over their information and their image? So even modeling that level of, hey, just FYI, are you aware that, you can put a setting on your Facebook page so that when I tag you in a photo, you have to give me permission to use it, right? So it's that conversation and modeling that level of consent. If I'm asking you, and I'm your mom, and I'm just saying, hey, is it okay if I post this picture? Is it okay if I tag you in this post because I'm, so proud of what happened at band, or I'm so proud of what you did for your sports? Then am I then modeling for that? And does my son or does my daughter start to pick up on, oh, wait a second, maybe I should get permission to post pictures of my friends. Maybe I should just make sure that that's okay. And we look at that in terms of not only then what do other people have access to for my children, but then what information is getting out there as far as how I'm trying to put my words together. What information is also getting out there about me? And again, for me, I approach it from the perspective of individuals who've been victims or survivors of domestic violence. A lot of times, perpetrators of that violence will find information through other people. So if I'm trying to seek safety, if I have sought safety and I've left and I'm if I've left and I haven't told that person where I am, but all of a sudden people are posting things about my kids and they're tagged in different school groups, or they're tagged in different, community groups. Hey, there's a clue, there's a breadcrumb. And those breadcrumbs, when brought together, can create a profile that allows somebody to identify my location, my schedule, the ways in which they can contact my children to ask questions, or to regain contact if that's been cut off. So there are all kinds of ways that this information can kind of be gathered from different places that creates an unsafer situation for me or for my children or for family members. So we want to be mindful and just make sure that we understand all of the ways that the information, even if we have consent to use it, can be used. And then making sure that other people know that, and reinforcing the need for consent from everybody else. I used to have arguments with my parents all the time because I didn't want my mom posting pictures about my kids. I didn't post pictures of my kids when they were very young on Facebook. My mom posted them all the time. And so I had to have that conversation with her in a very frank manner. Hey, I get it. You're proud of your grandkids, but please don't post their pictures in a way that I don't know what's happening with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I think that's really important. And you also have to think about, when you're talking with young people about images, and also us as parents and caregivers and things like that, would this, how would this image hold up, 10 years from now? Or would this potentially embarrass this child? Or, definitely thinking about those kinds of scenarios. And I actually had an situation come up on Valentine's Day. My girls, I got them in their cute little red and white outfits, and the baby couldn't tell me whether or not she wanted to consent, but I took pictures of her, and my 4-year-old said, Mommy, I just don't really want my picture taken today. And so I said, okay, yeah, that's fine, and we won't do that. And I actually posted something to that regard on my Facebook page, and I had someone say, like, I think that's really great that you honored and respected your daughter's, refusal to consent to that. And so I think that is really important, that we just respect their boundaries and respect their wishes around some of those things too.
Absolutely. And Heather, I know just from being in trainings with you and having conversations with you, you have so many great examples about, respecting a child's autonomy to make decisions like that. And I think as long as the internet exists, which it is never going away, the internet is forever. Whatever you post on the internet is forever, and the internet is here to stay. It's just people and this, millennials who have grown up with the internet. I mean, anyone who's born now will never know life without the internet. The same way we will never know life without cars and TV, and it's one of those technologies, one of those inventions that just permeates every facet of our life. And so long as that's the case, I think that these are conversations that we need to be having all the time. And I wish that we could have a longer conversation about it. It makes me think, I don't know, maybe this needs to become like a regular thing. Like this, we'll see what people think about this
I'd like
topic.
to kind of chime in on that. I think that that's something to consider, because every training I've ever been to, it's like we're trying, whether it's law enforcement, whether us as trainers, we're like almost behind the curve, because that's how fast technology changes. And you know, the different apps that kiddos are into, the different peer-to-peer games, just in general, how fast it's always advancing. We as trainers and folks that are trying to put the awareness out, we're always like, okay, I gotta like see what the new thing is, and what, you know. And so I think that there's something to be said about that ongoing awareness and educating, if you are interacting with kiddos and helping to keep them safe, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I'll add that to my project idea list that I have going.
I think it's also important to say, just as, I mean, the way our understanding even just is so far behind, the laws that govern and the regulation that governs the use of that technology, or the management of that technology, is even further behind. You know, the legislative wheels turned uber slow. I mean, if we turn slow, they are uber slow.
Absolutely.
So understanding that the options that we have then to respond if there is some sort of problem, or if there is an issue that's identified, is even slower, and it's even further delayed.
Absolutely. Well, since we only have a couple more minutes together, I do have one last question for both of you. If there's one thing that you want parents or caregivers who might have watched this video or might be tuning into this particular minute of the video, if there's one thing that you want them to do right now, one action that you would want them to take, what would it be?
I want them to sit down and talk with their kiddos and spend time with their kiddos, and just ask them, hey, you know, can we watch this together? And what kind of things are you checking out on YouTube for kids, or on TikTok, or whatever? And just really starting that like investment and interest in your children's online lives, for sure.
I think for me, it's kind of a twofold. It's an educate yourself. I think for a lot of, you know, and I will say, I fully own, I'm 41. Technology is something that I have grown up with, but it's also something that I recognize the time that it takes to understand the new stuff. You know, I'm like, oh, Facebook, yeah. My son will live on Instagram. I'm gonna need you to WhatsApp. I'm gonna need you to Snapchat. Okay. So it's understand not necessarily, or not just all of the what's out there, but how it's used and the ways that we need to engage in it, but also be realistic. You know, be realistic about the fact that when we were teenagers, we purposely did not tell our parents everything that we were doing. And that's critical for us as developing adults, that we have to be able to have that sense of privacy and autonomy to understand, and we're gonna make mistakes. And our fear as parents comes in that those mistakes are gonna haunt those kiddos for a long, long time. So it's managing that expectation of, I've gotta give you your privacy, I've gotta allow you to engage in the world in the way that you see fit, and I've gotta facilitate and hope that I'm doing it in a way that's really encouraging you to be open and honest with me. So that encourages me to be open and honest with you, so that I am facilitating that conversation.
Absolutely.
That's great, yeah.
I cannot thank both of you enough. We have so much more that I was really ambitious, I think, this time around. Like, I really tried to cram a lot in, and it wasn't going to happen. But McCoy will be sharing some of those additional resources and conversation points on social media. And, you know, if you watch this video later and you want to comment a question or share a thought or idea, you know, we're all online. The internet is forever and it's everywhere. So please feel free to interact that way. Again, just want to thank Karen and Heather for being here. That was so awesome. Such a great conversation. And we will be back on April 1st at noon. I think it's April 1st.
I think it's the 4th.
It's the 4th. You know what? I didn't update that date. We'll be back on the first Friday of April at noon. And we're planning on talking about the environment that day because hopefully, April 5th. Okay. We really need to get a calendar or something in there. But we'll be talking about the environment because hopefully it will be warmer and springy and nice. And yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about that day. But stay engaged with us, comment, like, share, and we'll be back next month. And thank you again, Karen.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.